In John chapter 5, we come to a section in John's Gospel. Between chapters 1 and 4, we see a very positive response to Jesus in general. But John, he begins to shift gears when we get to chapter 5 to chapter 12. We see more of a confrontation. John really begins to highlight, in some way, rejection of Christ, or the person of Christ. And this is right at the beginning. And we see this dynamic that really plays out in the Gospel of John. And in chapter 5, we come to a story, and the heading there is this healing at the pool. And I want to read chapter 5, verses 1 through 10 this morning. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leader said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." As I meditated and reflected on this passage, obviously we read this passage and one thing that really stands out is the healing. And you can't disregard that. But another thing that really kind of, I think, began to come out of the scripture for me this week was the different ways that God provides a way. What I mean by that is that here we see definitely one specific example with the invalid of how Jesus provides a way for him. But what other areas or what other ways that really began to show me was the story about this pool and some of the healing powers that's kind of associated with the pool, as well as the day on which it took place, it being the Sabbath day. And so this morning, I want us to just kind of go into this John chapter 5 a little bit, and I wanted to just maybe draw out at least the 3 different ways that I see how God provides a way for us. As we see the story in John 5, we'll see that God's faithfulness and His love is evidenced through His actions in this chapter. First point this morning that I want to share with you is God provides a way through unconventional methods. God provides a way through unconventional methods. Where do I get this? It has to do with this pool that we are drawn to in John chapter 5 at the beginning. At the beginning of John 5, John just tells us that Jesus is coming to Jerusalem. He came back to Jerusalem for a festival. He doesn't tell us what festival it is. And there's, all these scholars, they have a lot more time than you and I do. And they want to debate, and they want to research, and they want to search, what festival was this? Some people put it in the spring, some people later in the fall. Was it a Passover that required all Jewish males to come to Jerusalem, like the Passover? Or was it something else? John doesn't tell us the detail, or he doesn't give us that detail, because I don't think he wants us to focus on the festival. He wants us to focus on the fact that Jesus came back, and when he came back, he wants us to pay special care to what he did once he came back. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, verse 1, we're told, he goes to this place called Bethesda. Now, even with the name of Bethesda, scholars have all of these different ideas about where it could possibly be. But I believe in today, in Jerusalem, there's a church called St. Anne's Church. And right in that area, they've done some excavation, and they have found or discovered It's a pool, but recently a lowered area that was once a pool. There was 4 columns there right now, and so they believe that that is the location where this story takes place. Bethesda. What is it about this place? When we read John's description about the kind of people that are gathered in this pool, we begin to wonder, there's something more to the story here. In verse 3, he says that here, at this pool, a great number of disabled people used to lie. The blind, the lame, the paralyzed. I want you to look at your Bibles. Tell me if you see verse 4. Strange. My Bible doesn't have verse 4. Actually, it all depends on your translation. If you use some of the older translations like King James, New American Standard versions, they actually have verse 4. NIV, NLT, or New Living Translation, English Standard versions. These versions, you don't get verse 4. Why are all these people gathered in this area? Verse 7, fast forward to verse 7. The invalid, he replies to Jesus' question of, hey, do you want to get well? And his response is, sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when it's stirred. And you read that, you're thinking, what is going on? We don't have the complete picture. Because most of you, I assume, you guys are using the NIV most likely, because you guys have never read the little footnote in your Bible. Find it. Okay, if you look at in between verse 3 and 5, there should be a little, I don't know, sometimes they'll put a little number there, like a 4 or a little, I don't know, like, number 1 or some kind of a designation, like a footnote to go and look at the bottom of your Bible. Or on your digital things, just click on that little note right there. And then a little window will pop up. And it says this, and it's actually the end of verse 4 and end of verse 3 and verse 4. It says this. And they waited for the moving of the waters. From time to time, an angel of the Lord would come down and stir up the waters. The first one into the pool, after each such disturbance, would be cured of whatever disease he had. That is the missing verse in many of our translations. Now, John chapter 5 is a difficult chapter. You study through the Gospel of John. Some people look at chapter 5 and think, whoa, this doesn't seem to fit along the story, so they actually like to take 5 and 6 and flip it around. They think it should go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5, 7, 8, etc. Because the scholars can't put the timeline of John 5, especially the festival. They really struggle with where to put that. But they also really struggle with what do you do with the passage? What do you do with a verse that is not found in some of the best and earliest manuscripts of John? What do you do with that? They began to see tail end of verse 3 and verse 4 in the later times, well after the discovery of some of the best scrolls. And so because they found these translations or copies much later, and they include these verses, but some of the earlier ones do not. NIV translators, for example, have decided we will just remove these verses and just insert a footnote. But these omitted verses actually really help us understand the story, doesn't it? Yeah, you have to ask, why are all these people gathered? What does this guy's response in verse 7, what does that mean? Go down to the pool, get in when the water is stirred? There's no doubt that verse 3 and verse 4 was inputted, whether or not at a later period of time. It really helps us understand this passage a little bit better. But leads to another question, doesn't it? Was this a true story? If the NIV translators feel that this may not have been a true story, let's just take it out. Or maybe it's just they came strictly from a textual standpoint. They weren't really sure. So let's take it out. But why are all these people gathered here? Was this a true story? That's the question that we have to look at. And when we look at the response of the man, I think when we look at the response in verse 7, we get an idea of whether or not this was a true story or not. When you read verse 7, do you sense any kind of doubt in the man's voice? If you use your app, your phone app, Bible app in your phone, they recently have put an audio Bible in there. NIV, one person narrates the whole thing, but if you listen to the NLT, the New Living Translation, they actually have different people who speak the voices of the various characters. I listened to that this past week. When we get to verse 7, the man replies in a way that he is absolutely certain that if he is the first one into the pool, when the water is stirred, he will be healed. There is no doubt in his voice. For him, the pool represented a genuine means to healing. That is undeniable. Was this a true story? Who knows? But I also think that when the news started spreading into the town in Jerusalem, hey, if you go to this pool, just stand by there, and when the water is disturbed or stirred, jump in there, or get in there, touch it, because you will be healed. When that began to spread among the sick, I would imagine, right, that the very first time all these people went there, and they were all just looking at the pool. At the moment that the water was disturbed, that the first person, if he or she went in there and didn't come out healed of whatever sickness that they had, the legend of the place would not have grown. Right? Let's say all of us, we're all suffering from something, and someone tells us, hey, go down to the Oregon coast somewhere, into the forest, there's this hot springs. When you see it stirred, water stirred, jump in there, and whatever sickness that you're dealing with, you will be healed. Half of you would not even go, because you would think, that is something that's very difficult for us to understand. Half of us, we go there, we're watching and we're waiting. Water stirs. One of you guys jump in. You get out, you're like, no change. I don't feel any different. We will walk away disappointed. But the legend of this place grew, which suggests that there was something about this place. Was it a true story? John doesn't really tell us. Scholars have different debates about it. But there was definitely tradition of healing that is associated with pools of Bethesda. Well, after the time of Jesus, it was actually a place that was used as a healing sanctuary for many, many years. So the legend of this place continued well after the time of Jesus. There has to be some connection between this pool, the healing powers of it, and God. I think it reveals God's amazing grace that He will grant these miracles, these miraculous healings at the pool of Bethesda for those who were suffering, that they could come and find relief from their ailments. You know, people have a real difficulty wrapping around their minds around the superstition. And that's what they see this as, kind of a superstition, that these pools have some kind of a miraculous healing power. But can't you imagine God working in this way? This was an unconventional way to heal people. And I believe that that is how God operates from time to time. In John chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, we see such an example as Jesus heals a blind man. In John chapter 9, verse 6, it says this: After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. Jesus didn't touch his eyes. He didn't command him to say, let your sight be restored. Jesus used mud. We can go outside and find mud very easily. In this climate, it's not as easy. Water was very precious. It's usually stayed deep in the ground. They didn't have, like a faucet that they could simply turn on. They dug wells, and that was a very dry climate. Jesus used mud. Where did he get this mud? He used his spit and saliva. Imagine if you're the disciples. You're sitting there, standing next to Jesus, and all of a sudden Jesus just spits on the ground. Just think about that sight. When you see people even in our day walking around, sometimes you see someone, they bring it up from the depths, and you're just like, oh. We're just kind of grossed out by spit in general. And yet, Jesus spits on the ground. Okay? He bends down, he picks it up, mixes it together. Then he takes it and puts it on the guy's eyes. I would love to see the look on people's face. Like, what is he doing? Not only that, but this was a delayed healing. It required the man to take a step of faith. Well, I mean, he had to go wash it off anyways, right? Because he has spit and dirt basically on his eyes. But he actually listens, he obeys, and he goes and washes. When he goes and washes, he's healed. It's an unconventional method, an unconventional way. God provides a way through unconventional methods. Second point is this: God provides a way for those who have lost hope. And this is where we really begin to see this man, the invalid. Hope is the feeling that what is wanted can be had, or that events will turn out for the best. Hope. You and I, we all have it to some form, some degree. We're full of certain things. Hope is what gets us out of bed, to get back on our feet and try again. Hope gives us the courage to face another day. Hope fuels our drive because we believe things can change or improve. I played my first organized sports, basketball, when I was in the 8th grade. That first year was rough. I used to just play with my friends, not bound by restriction of having a referee right on the spot to call certain violations or whatnot. Or just even the crowds that may come to the games. We entered the playoffs, and I remember just the nerves. We were met up with the team that we had just lost to the week before in the last game of the regular season. In that game, I had my nose broken. I took a charge, and the guy came, and as he jumped up and as he tried to pass the ball, he landed on me. His elbow struck me in the nose. And I got up, and I thought, just like a little dinger. I got up and I looked at my coach, and I felt something kind of trickling down. I looked down and I see like drops of blood that's just falling onto the court. And I'm like, what is this? At that point, it was early in the game. It was like first quarter, and we were down by about 1 or 2 or 3 points or something like that. It was very close. The coach would not let me play for the rest of the game. The bleeding had stopped. I was like, I can go in. After halftime, I was sitting right by him on the bench going, hey, let me in. We're down by 20. Let's go. Let me in. 25. Hey, coach, let me in. I'm fine. He says, no. I held out hope for the rest of the game. And as the score kept on getting more lopsided, that he will put me into the game. Didn't happen. The next week, we entered the playoffs. Same team, same guy, right on the other side. We enter into the playoffs. We enter into a season with the hope that we will win a championship. Just because you lose a game doesn't mean that you give up hope. You give back up and you try again. You miss a free throw or you miss a shot. You hope the next one. You expect the next one will go in. When Jesus asks this invalid, do you want to get well? We see genuine desire in this man. Once again, he says, sir. Verse 7, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is through. When I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. We see there is a desire for him to get well. But also in that verse and in that response, we see his hopelessness. He comes at the end, he says, sir, I try, but I can't because I have no one to help me. You contrast this guy with the story in Mark of the guy who was paralyzed. Same situation. He actually has 4 friends that carry him to Jesus. House is packed. What do they do? They don't turn around and say, oh, well, let's come back tomorrow. They go up to the roof and they start digging, right? They dig through the roof. They make an opening large enough to lower him. Jesus says, your faith has healed you. Contrast that guy with this guy. He has no friends. He doesn't have 4 friends that would pick him up. He doesn't have friends that would kick and beat all the other people trying to rush in so that they can get him into the pool. Similar situation, yet the results are completely different. This guy is in a state of hopelessness. He was close. He was at the pool. But because he didn't have the help, he could not get in. Could not find healing. Very frustrating, I think. And we begin to see this dire situation that this man faced. You know, John doesn't tell us a lot about him. We don't know how long he's been coming to the pool. We do know that he had been in this condition 38 years. We don't know if it's from birth or sometime later. We don't know how he lost the use of his legs. Was it a sickness? Was it an injury? 38 years though, John does tell us. He was in this situation for 38 years. That's a long time. That's longer than many of you have been alive. 38 years. Can you imagine something 38 years? I think it's been about 38 years since Portland Trailblazers have won a championship. That's a long time. We were close many times, right? 76, 77, right? Almost at about that time. 38 years is a long time to suffer from the same condition. John does give us that detail, maybe to highlight what a miraculous miracle this is. Maybe he gives us that information because he wants us to understand it was beyond all logical understanding and expectation that this will result in this type of healing. This man, he didn't know Jesus. And the picture that I have of this scene is this, that he is sitting there with his eyes to the pool. That's where everybody is. They're sitting around, everyone is looking at the pool. Why? That's the purpose why they're all there. And Jesus kind of comes and approaches him from the back. And I just picture Jesus talking to this guy. And him kind of looking over at the shadow that has kind of been casted over him. And saying, "Hey, how are you? Do I want to get well? Of course I want to do well, get well." And all the time he's focused on the pool. That's kind of the picture that I see playing here. I don't see him dialoguing with Jesus this way. Because he's keeping an eye onto the pool to see this through. He knows he can't get there, but he's still fixated on that pool. Because that is the source of healing. He doesn't see Jesus as the source of healing. But only if he knew who was asking the question, right? Jesus commands him. Verse 8. Get up, take your mat, and walk. At the command of Jesus, the man is healed. At once, the man is cured. He picks up his mat and he walks. The healing occurred instantaneously. It was an instant healing. When Jesus said, "Get up, take your mat, and walk," he was able to get up, pick up his mat, and walk. No delay at all. One of my professors at the seminary, he says this: "It is encouraging to know that Christ does not command the impossible without furnishing the enabling grace to accomplish it." He asked him to get up and walk. It wasn't an impossible task for Jesus. He provided the grace so that he could get up and walk and obey. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing healing. But you know what's even more amazing? The man showed no faith in him. Remember my first point, Jesus heals unconventional methods. Sometimes this would fit there too. The person being healed doesn't have to ask, doesn't have to demonstrate any faith. Jesus heals just because. In other stories, we see some faith. The woman who had been bleeding for many years, right? She thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. A father who had a sick son, he rushes to Jesus and says, "Come with me. If you come with me, I know my son will be healed. I know you can heal my son." Jesus says, "Go, your son lives." He takes Jesus at his word and he returns back home. On the way home, one of his servants comes and says, "Son, it's a miracle, your son's alive. He's well." And he says, "When did the fever leave him?" Precise moment when Jesus said, "Your son will live." There is always a faith or a demonstration of faith that leads to healing. That's very common. But here, it's not the case. Jesus healed him because he wanted to. This man had no hope of getting well. He didn't have those 4 friends like the other guy. He realized that he was going to live the rest of his life with this sickness. God provides a way for those who have lost hope. When we're at the end of the rope, when we have exhausted all of our resources, when we have used up all of our strength and energy and have lost hope, God is there to offer a way. God provides a way through unconventional methods. God provides a way for those who have lost hope. And lastly, God provides a way each and every day. What day did this take place, this healing?
Sabbath.
Sabbath. Now, Sabbath is most simple way to explain, I think, the Sabbath is, it was supposed to be a day of rest. right? That's how we kind of generally understand the term. So Friday sunset or sundown until Saturday sunset, 24-hour period. If you go to West Los Angeles today, okay, or actually upcoming week, if you go to West Los Angeles, there's a lot of Orthodox Jews that live in West LA. So you can see them by their clothing. The men would always wear black suits, white shirt, hat, black hat, and they always have these curled things or sideburns that come down. That's very common. That's how they dress Monday through on the non-Sabbath day particularly. That's how that they normally dress every day. When you go to West LA on Friday night, you will see a lot of people walking on the streets. These Jews are still observing the Sabbath day. So for them, the day of rest means that they spend it together as a family, they don't drive, and there's so many things that they do not do on the Sabbath day. When I used to live in K-Town, and I would just kind of drive around, it was really weird for me to see. You expect a lot of foot traffic in downtown, in Koreatown, right? You don't expect the foot traffic in this kind of neighborhood. But you go to just a regular neighborhood, and there are hundreds and hundreds of people walking around. You know, families are out there, mother, father, kids, just walking. The Sabbath day today for many of the Jews is a day of rest. You forego some of the things that you normally would during the rest of the week. Driving is definitely one of those things. They walk everywhere, but they always try to spend the time together as a family. Sabbath day, a day of rest. We are so busy in our schedule, go, that we don't even have a day of rest. For pastors, Mondays are generally our day of rest. After a long weekend of ministry, Monday is usually a time where we just relax. Because it's a day that we all need. We all need a day to rest and to recharge. That was the spirit of the Sabbath day, but by the time of Jesus, it had been kind of perverted to represent a lot more than just that simple fact. When Jesus says, take up your mat and walk, or he says, get up, take up your mat and walk. The man simply gets up, and he may have rolled up a little mat, tucked it under his arm, and he began to walk. Now, the religious leaders, they see this and they're thinking, hey, what's wrong with you? It's the Sabbath. And the law forbids you to carry your mat. Sabbath day, a day of rest. So therefore they said, it's because we have to rest, it should be a day free from work. But what is work? Well, let's help the people so that we don't fall violation to the Sabbath. So they began to write rules down. What constitutes work? And in their interpretation, our translation says mat. Some of the other translations use bed. Okay? It would be something that people put down to either sleep on or rest on, or something to that effect. It's not like a mattress like today, but maybe like a sleeping pad or something like that. They said, you cannot carry that on the Sabbath. And that's the violation that this man apparently was found guilty of. God intended the Sabbath day to be a day to honor and delight in Him. But by the time of the first century, it was far from that. The rules and regulations laid out by the religious leaders put a huge burden on the people. They had so many regulations that it was nearly impossible to keep track of them all. one of the commentaries, the NIV commentary, it says this about the Sabbath. Sabbath is God's day. It must be kept free from worldly pursuits. That's kind of the original intent. So the regulations began in the laudable attempt to safeguard the holiness of the day. You see, when they began to put the regulations in, they wanted to protect the holiness of the day. A day that they set aside to honor God, to rest. But they began to put all of these rules and regulations down. And by doing so, the regulations became so many and so many variations that it actually was absurd. And how many things that they said you could and could not do. I, as a commoner, could not use medicine on the Sabbath. But a royal official, his son is sick, he could use oil for him when he's sick. The reason why? That's something that they normally do every day. Right? They have the means to do that every day, whereas I, the poor old John, this would be an incredible expense. Something that is so expensive that it's not something that's taken care of. It's something that I would do readily on every single day. That's the kind of level in which the religious leaders began to break down what you could and could not do on the Sabbath. In their desire to keep the Sabbath, they defined what was work so that they would know exactly what they could and couldn't do. The last thing that they wanted to do was violate the Sabbath, but what ended up happening was that they made it an impossibility to actually keep the Sabbath. So Sabbath was not about keeping the Sabbath. It's not about a holy day and a rest day. But it was all about how do we keep from violating. And the focus and shift completely turned away from what God's originally intended. So Jesus, when he comes, he's going to begin to challenge them on these ideas of the Sabbath. And so we see a confrontation with the religious leaders because Jesus keeps healing on the Sabbath. He keeps on just poking their buttons. He wants them to see, don't look at the rules that you have made up, but look at what the work that God is doing on this day. That's what he's doing. The objection of the religious leaders really demonstrates their hardened attitude. They should have rejoiced that a miracle took place. 38 long years this guy suffered. He was made well. But they chose to ignore that and only focus on the violation of the Sabbath. They were too entangled in their legalism to acknowledge the wonder of God. Jesus chose to do good on the Sabbath, and yet these people, religious leaders, were offended because it went against their interpretation. They dismissed the healing, which in itself is a tragedy. Isn't it not amazing how some people will see the work of God, whereas others miss it altogether because of a critical or judgmental attitude? I don't know where you stand in the whole miracle stuff. There are some camps in our Christian faith that are very embracing and open to that. And then there is other camps who are very, no, that cannot be. They don't believe that those miraculous healings take place today. They believe that many of the miracles that the Gospels talks about was set in that time period only. But there are things that happen in our world that cannot be explained. Right? God touches people. How do we explain that? And your tradition and the way in which you interpret the scripture and your understanding of God really begins to shape where on this spectrum that you sit. Sometimes we discredit certain things because we think, oh, there's no way that can be. And when we do that, we really miss, I think, what God does. But God is not concerned nor limited by the day, season, or time. John chapter 5, Jesus should not have healed because it was the Sabbath. Because the man's regulation said, do not work, do not heal. Do not cause someone to go into violation of the Sabbath by healing them, telling them to pick up their mat and walk. Because there was a restriction on how far you could walk. Sabbath day rules were just a burden for many of the people. God is not concerned about the rules and regulations that limit what can and cannot be done. For God, each day is precious and offers opportunity for Him to open a way for us. God provides a way each and every single day. God provides a way for us to come to Him. He uses all means possible to draw His children to Him. And God always provides a way. Perhaps some of you are going through difficulties, and it's taken its toll on you. You were full of hope once, but over the years, hope has vanished. I have a friend who, about a year and a half ago, through a mountain biking accident, he was paralyzed from the waist down. We hold out hope every day, and we pray. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kakao Talk. There's a chat room that we have in there. We have about 80 people. Anytime someone has a word of encouragement, we get a message saying, hey, I'm praying for you. This morning I prayed for you. I really feel like we must press on. So it's a source of a community that comes together to really say, hey, we'll hold out hope that someday you will walk again. The muscles in his body, they just twitch a little bit. And every time that happens, we all get excited. But when nothing happens for months after, it's easy to lose hope. But him and his wife, they've been going through roller coasters up and down emotionally, but still one thing has remained steadfast. It's the belief that God can. And if He so chooses, He will restore him. That is what we hold him. Maybe you're faced with an impossible situation. You've exhausted all of your resources and options. You don't know what to do anymore. You've prayed, but there's silence. You want to maintain good attitude and spirit. But man, it's been so hard. Doubt begins to creep into your mind, into our hearts. Maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. Maybe God doesn't want. Those are the thoughts that begin to kind of come. That hope of restoration is a distant memory now. I pray that you are encouraged this morning that when things look impossible, that God is actively working behind the scenes. No matter what the circumstance, to engage us, to reassure us that He is there, that He knows and cares, and more importantly, perhaps, that God will provide a way. It's going to come. When? We don't know. 38 years? Maybe not. But maybe you have to wait a little longer. This invalid suffered for 38 years. And when it looked like he would never get well, out of the blue, this guy Jesus, who he didn't even know, never heard anything about him, shows up and He heals him. He is not healed by the pool, which he was fixated on for so many years, but by a Savior's love. Do you know another interesting thing about this story? On this day, at the pool of Bethesda, this guy was not alone. There were so many other people there that needed healing. Why didn't Jesus just walk around and just heal everybody? Once again, don't know. On this day at Bethesda, Jesus showed up for one man who had lost hope. One man who had a desire to get well, but he faced hopelessness. He came so that he would restore him. God always provides a way. Let's pray.